And because Falun Gong is an independent group, they have paid a very, very heavy price now for quite some time in so far as being perceived and treated as enemies. But now we add to that list the destruction of Christian churches, the arrest and prosecution of a 90-year-old cardinal in Hong Kong, and of course the horrific maltreatment of the Uyghurs. So now we just unfortunately have added so many of these groups to the list. It does reflect the underlying messages, together with the technology, that the Chinese Communist government wants to control every aspect of everyone's lives in that nation and beyond.
Sharing similar territorial disputes with Beijing in the South China Sea, the Philippines and Vietnam are now looking to counter those challenges together. The Philippines president is expected to sign a military pact with his Vietnamese counterpart next week when he visits the country. The final draft of the agreement says the two will work towards the promotion, preservation, and protection of their mutual interests in the Southeast Asian region. China has claimed almost the entire South China Sea as its own, and tensions there with other countries are escalating. Chinese and Philippine vessels have clashed multiple times in the past few months. Chinese vessels also got close to Vietnam shore several times last summer and were accused of attempting to interrupt Vietnamese operations. The Philippines has been asking for help from the U.S. and its allies to deal with the aggression. U.S. President Joe Biden said the U.S. will support the Philippines if it's attacked in the South China Sea. The Pentagon has been granted access to 9 military bases in the nation since last February. A rare glimpse at China's true COVID-19 death toll. A new paper reveals over 20,000 deaths didn't make it to the official count in 2023. And that's just in one district in Shanghai, China's most populous city. The data comes from a paper published on a Chinese medical journal and is compared to the figure recorded in Shanghai's statistical yearbook and the official death toll register system. The report.
One city official saying the gunman fled when their weapon jammed after firing 2 rounds. Turkish authorities investigating, ordering a ban on media coverage of the attack. In the Louvre Museum.
Let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you. If I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. It's like going through someone's house when he isn't home. You know you've been invited, but the host just isn't there yet. Like there's always more going on than what you can see. Swords and prayers have clashed here since the days of David. The past is everywhere. And yet you sense the future is always there in the shadows, just waiting for the moment to press in. This is perhaps the most significant ground in Jerusalem. The temple built by Herod stood on this great square. Remember when our Lord was here, he cried out in this very place, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. And his invitation to a thirsty world is as imperative in our day as it was when he called to the seeking worshipers in this temple area long ago.
Back drone attack on a small U.S. outpost. This is the first time Americans have been by enemy fire in the Middle East since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war. It's still unclear why air defense systems failed or some U.S. forces at the outpost are there as part of an advise and assist mission with Jordan. During a stop in South Carolina, President Biden saying, "We see for a moment of silence." Meantime, Israel's defense minister, his country has no motive but to continue the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. U.S. negotiators making progress on a tentative agreement in which Israel would pause military operations for the release of 100 hostages. And discussed of nations say that terms of a deal involve two phases, with the remaining women, elderly, and wounded hostages to be released by Hamas in the first 30 days. The preliminary deal also calls for Israel to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza. The UN Secretary
If the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
Le gouvernement britannique, en reconnaissant dans ma personne le chef des Français libres, a une grande importance.
While Great Britain battled the Germans for their right to exist, small groups began to rise up to fight back against the Nazi occupation, which by now had 300 million people under its iron fist. Unorganized at first and more of a nuisance, the resistance movement eventually grew and spread across all the countries of Europe and would play a significant role in harassing the German army for the duration of the war, especially in France.
occupied Europe.
The Bible clearly reveals that God has a plan for the world, and that the Middle East is God's timepiece for that plan. Jerusalem, reclaimed after nearly 2,000 years, could well mean that we are nearing the end of a definite block of time on God's calendar, and that the world has moved a step closer toward the climactic events that will end this age. When Christ clearly predicted the destruction of this city under the armies of Rome, he also indicated that Gentile domination of the world would come to an end one day, and that this change in world affairs would begin here in Jerusalem.
Northside Hospital in Duluth for a person shot at around 2:15 a.m. Sunday. They then learned the shooting actually happened here in the Paragon Town Center parking lot.
It's certainly a tragedy when a young person loses their life like this, and our detectives are going to do absolutely everything they can to try to find the person responsible.
Sergeant Jennifer Richter with the Gwinnett County Police Department said detectives are trying to figure out who shot a 17-year-old and why.
The victim was in critical condition, and then late yesterday we learned that the victim had in fact died. He has been identified as 17-year-old Albert Josh Brown of Snellville, Georgia.
Witnesses say the shooting happened just outside this bowling alley after it closed overnight. Richter says Brown's friends took him to the hospital, and detectives are interviewing them. But so far, they haven't identified possible suspects.
And we do not have a suspect in custody, so we are asking that any members of the public who may have information about this case, please get in contact with our detectives.
Sergeant Richter says the department is working to track guns involved in crimes in the county to try to prevent these types of shootings.
We've invested in new technology to try to track weapons within the county. The NIBIN system can help us identify shell casings and match them up to weapons and then track those weapons down, and then hopefully connect them, to whatever crimes they may have been used in.
Gwinnett County Police are urging anyone who might know anything about this shooting to call their detectives, and you can remain anonymous by reporting it through Crime Stoppers. We're now reporting in Gwinnett County, Eric Mock, Fox 5 News.
An overnight drone attack. It happened on a U.S. base in Jordan. Military officials say at least 34 soldiers were injured during the attack. Tonight, the White House blames the strike on Iranian-backed militias operating in Iraq and Syria. The incident also got the attention of GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley. She commented on the attack during a campaign event in South Carolina.
The fact that we lost 3 and dozens were wounded after 160 attacks on our men and women in the military. It is absolutely shameful.
The White House says the names of the 3 soldiers will be released to the public once their families have been notified. Georgia Senator John Ossoff issued a statement after the deadly attack. He said, quote, "I join all Georgians in mourning the loss of these heroic service members and condemning those responsible. My team and I are in close touch with the U.S. military leadership and senior U.S. national security officials." A man is dead, hit and killed while trying to cross a busy intersection in Marietta. It happened around 10 last night near South Marietta Parkway and Wiley Road. Investigators say a 2014 Nissan Altima hit 57-year-old William Gould. He was pronounced dead at the scene. So far, no word on whether the driver will face any charges. Looking ahead, happening this week, a former Doraville police officer accused of kidnapping and murdering a high school student is set to appear in court. Miles Bryant now facing multiple charges in the death of 16-year-old Susana Morales. She vanished in 2022, but
here with his army. And that takes us back to Ezekiel's day, 2,500 years ago. And today, these stones, which Christ undoubtedly passed many times, again echo praise to God on the eve of the Sabbath, as they did when he worshipped here in Jerusalem. The Sabbath begins promptly at sundown, and when the old city takes on a golden hue in the late afternoon sunlight, the ultra-Orthodox Jews hurry toward the wall, eager to keep their holy appointment. The fur-trimmed hats, the long black coats, the bobbing side curls are right out of the Middle Ages, preserving the strict tradition of life in the European ghettos. Jerusalem has always been a heady mixture of human and holy. Perhaps such moments come closest to touching the heart of Jerusalem. For despite its monumental past, Jerusalem exists for the future. And in God's city, where he was once very near, men still reach out to find him.
The images were incredible. Laid wreaths at the death wall in Auschwitz. Prayers were held at a monument to memorialize the nearly 1.1 million camp victims who were mostly Jews. During the entirety of the Holocaust, nearly 6 million European Jews were killed by Nazis in World War II. Also in Germany, people put down flowers and lit candles at memorials. Germany's chancellor says his country will continue to carry the responsibility for the crime against humanity. And on Friday, Poland held a memorial ceremony for those prayers who fought in 1943. Well, still ahead, the Newsnet weather